everybody, Backyard Bullion here. Is 2020 going to be a meteoric year for silver and gold? That's probably one of the biggest burning questions that a lot of silver and gold stackers out there have, and investors who want to look to make a little bit of money in the world of gold and silver. So today we're going to address that topic about whether or not 2020 could be a good year or not, how that impacts me as a stacker and potentially you guys as well, and the impacts that has on my buying strategies for the year for my own personal pension stacks of gold and potentially also business assets for hand-poured silver and things like that. So there's lots of things to consider. I am, of course, just making a opinionated commentary, I guess you could call it. It's just a collection of my thoughts and opinions on this shiny metal stuff here. It's not financial advice, and I would highly recommend everybody out there go and do a lot more research than just watching my video. But always do it with an eye open, like one eye open and looking on something else. A pinch of salt, I guess, if you want another metaphor, because my opinion is going to be different to other people's. My outlook is going to be different to other people's. Also, the motives of the various different like news articles, bullion websites that have the different forecasting price predictions for 2020. I've said this before, I'll say it time and time again, that these sources will all have different motives, different opinions, different circumstances, and it's just worth keeping an eye of what's right for you in the camera here. What is going to be right for you in 2020? So the aim of this video is not necessarily to predict what is going to happen, because nobody knows, but to inform you and get you into the mindset of how I process things and how I think about things. Now, this year is an interesting one. 2020 ahead has a lot going on in it. Brexit for us here in the UK is a big thing to happen. We've got impeachment happening, possibly, probably not, in America. We've got the election in the United States of America as well. And there are some lingering things from 2019 that are sitting there in the background that might have an effect on these wonderful shiny things. Trade wars is something I want to briefly touch on. So 2019 is an interesting thing. Now, any gold and silver kind of price predictor will always look back at previous years as an indicator of what might happen in the future. So 2019 is not to be ignored because it was a really interesting year for the prices of metals. Very good year for the prices of metals in that we saw 15, 16, 17% rises in those metal values across the year, which is of course a fantastic return if you sell. I have said many times on my channel before as well that you never make a profit or a loss unless you actually sell your metals. So yeah, interesting year in 2019, of course, very good year in terms of prices. Does that mean that it's going to continue and we're going to get bigger and better prices going forward? Well, in 2019, all of those price increases happened at kind of one particular time of year in the summer, and there has been a slow, gradual tick down in the prices since there, and we have finished the year lower than the highs earlier in the year. So will that tick down continue? That's definitely something to think about. Now, the lingering, what ifs from 2019 are, in my opinion, a little less relevant for 2020. So there was a lot of talk about trade wars in 2019. Whilst those sort of thoughts and feelings necessarily haven't gone completely, they have somewhat mitigated. We know a little bit more than we did last year about those. But there are, of course, different things to think about going forward in terms of trade that affect big blocks of global economies. Europe is one thing to think about. We, of course, have Brexit, to consider, and the future trade relationship of the UK and EU, and then potentially with the UK and other countries around the world, the US, Canada, whoever it might be. So there's lots of different trade things to think about, and we haven't even touched on the US going outside of Europe, so China and the like as well. So there's definitely still some things to think about that. Now, what does that actually transpose and mean? Well, whenever you have those kind of uncertain times, uncertain things to think about, there is, of course, the draw to go to safe haven assets, and that is exactly what gold and silver are. They are safe haven assets. They're physical. You've got that locked up and it's there. You can't lose it as numbers on screen. If there's a huge currency collapse in the dollar, the pound, the euro, then you have that safe haven safety net, because if the dollar collapsed, of course, the price of silver and gold would go up. So there's definitely, things to think about in that sense about the impact that these uncertain times have. Safe haven assets will become more attractive to investors. However, that said, the stock markets for 2019 were at all-time highs, and we're continuing to increase those all-time highs, which is fantastic if you have a diverse portfolio and you have some stocks and shares. They are going to be earning you good returns quickly, more so than gold and silver. They might also be paying dividends. Big, investors will want to have those tangible asset returns more quickly than gold and silver can. It's very much a slow, long-term thing for those. So that's definitely something to think about. Now, the other topic, I've got a little bullet point list here that I wanted to talk about. The other thing to mention is that there are potential worries about global slowdowns. Now, one thing that's been fueling pretty good years these last couple of years is the strength of the dollar, and there's no doubting. This is not meant to be a political dig or anything. Trump is not everybody's favourite. Even Trump supporters will admit that. There are, he divides opinion. That is probably one of his strongest strengths. He definitely divides opinion, but he has seemed to have kickstarted the U.S. economy. He's certainly been in charge when things have gone well for the U.S. dollar. Will that continue? That's an important thing to think about. If the US dollar potentially looks to be a little bit weaker going forward into the future, that will have an effect on the price of gold and silver in the positive. Of course, a weaker currency will yield a higher value in gold and silver because the currency will deflate or it will just become weaker over time, and that will fuel the growth of these metals. So there's definitely something to think about there about how impeachment is going to affect the US economy. Well, I don't really think that it will, but will the US economy slow down because everybody's so obsessed with it? I really can't see that happening. If Donald Trump is actually impeached and removed from office, I have a feeling that would have pretty high impact on various different policies, enactments, things like that. But on the other side of things, to fight the impeachment, to have all of the US Senate and House of Representatives really very, very tied up in all of these lengthy, time-consuming proceedings. It takes time away from other potential benefits that could be happening within lawmaking in the US for economic, for anything else. There are lots of things that could be affected by it, whether or not Donald Trump is impeached or not. Of course, then there's the election running up later in the year as well, and gosh knows how that is going to turn out. Personally, I can't see Donald Trump losing the election the second time around. I don't know, but who knows? Anything could happen, and it will be an interesting one to watch for sure. And I'm really looking forward to November 2020 when I'll be staying up very late at night watching the results come in, that's for sure. And I know a lot of people will be doing so as well. But that election will have an impact on silver and gold either way the result comes out. So there's lots of things happening in 2020. One thing that I think I can say for sure in 2020 that will not happen is shooting the moon. Now, I wanted to put this part of the video in. I've said it so many times before on my channel, and if you are new to my channel or you've been watching just for a couple of weeks or months, you've probably guessed by now at this point of the video that I'm much more of a real-world pragmatist when it comes to things like moonshots for gold and silver. I don't buy gold and silver because I expect it to shoot the moon and make me a millionaire, or I am so convinced that the US dollar will collapse or the pound will collapse, such that I need to put all my wealth into this precious metal now to protect it for the future. That is not my mindset. That is not how I see silver and gold as an investment. I see it as a diversification tool for a well-rounded portfolio. I see it as a hedge against inflation, an insurance against if things did go pear-shaped with the rest of your investments and the rest of your portfolio. So that's my kind of mindset on it. I've never been an advocate, never been a fan of people saying that silver will shoot the moon, but it is unfortunate that those kind of things still get published and put out there. Now, there are, of course, so many opinions, and yes, theoretically silver could shoot the moon, but people need to remember, and this is probably my biggest message that I continue to advocate here on my channel, that even if silver did shoot the moon, if this white stuff here went to $1,000 an ounce, it would mean nothing, because an ounce of silver is still worth an ounce of silver. An ounce of silver has a buying power, And whether that means that you get $10,000 in return in fiat currencies or $20 in return for fiat currencies, that money will still buy you the same amount that one ounce of silver would at either price point. So it's a redundant thing for people to wish and want that to go to the moon. And people who don't understand that, who blindly say that it's going to happen regardless, that's the other thing that I always advocate here as well, that for that to happen, for the dollar to completely collapse, disappear, there would be anarchy, there would be wars, there would be riots, there would be a right brown poo storm, to put a monetized friendly word out here on the channel. It would not happen, in my opinion. It just, the powers that be would not let it happen. And I know that sounds really weird and strange, but you'd be saying, but look, Backyard Bullion, the debt clock says we're at 1 minute to midnight and we've got X trillion amounts of debt with zeros and all of this, and everything is just going to pot. Well, who's to say they just can't increase the debt ceiling, or who's to say they won't just add an extra zero or create a new number so we go from trillion to quadrillion or to septillion or whatever it might be. I'm aware septillion is not after quadrillion, but I couldn't remember quickly. Quintillion, is it for 5? But anyway, the point is, it's not going to happen. If it did, there would be far much more at stake, far much more to lose than having that debt cashed in. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen one day. It might happen one day. And if it does, and that's what you firmly believe will happen, then that's fine too. And I'm not really here to belittle your thinking, but I am here to basically try and say that I personally don't think that's going to happen. That's not how I take my thought processes when I look to buy this stuff and this stuff. So how does all of that 10 minutes of rambling that I've just done, and I know that sounds like a lot of rambling, but I've had a long think about this video and this topic for this video, about how it impacts me as a buyer of gold and silver. Now, nobody knows the future. That is the most important thing to say. So whilst all of this information is really good, it does, of course, help you understand what might happen, but you don't know what's going to happen. All you can control is your own actions. And for me, I have a strategy of accumulating this stuff here, the yellow shiny stuff, for the future, for my pension, for a long-term investment, for that wealth preservation, to hold for it for a long time. There's no arguing that over a long period of time, and a long period of time that you have control over when you enter and exit, will potentially yield a really good return. Equal so to perhaps buying property. And I do sometimes equate gold especially to like buying a little tiny portion of a house or a flat. The one gold coin that you buy here, this 1 ounce of gold, is £1,000, £1,100, however much you spent on it, worth of property. And you can liquidate that when you need. A lot easier than buying a house or buying a flat. It holds value like bricks and mortar do. It's physical. It's something that people can use and have and hold. So there's definitely things to think about in that side of things. So for me, for the long term, accumulating gold is still the target. Now, I personally think, so rounding up on everything that I've talked about, I do think that gold prices and silver prices will slowly tick up across the year. I think there's enough instability, uncertainty, unknowns around the rest of the year, certainly in the UK with Brexit, which will have an impact not on only the metal prices but the value of our currency as well, that I do think gold will potentially slowly tick up across the year. There may be a large bit up, there may be a bit down, but I think generally speaking up it will go. So I think buying gold is still viable for me across the year. I'm not going to front load. I'm going to continue with my buying strategies of a couple of ounces here and there when I need to, when I have the cash within that budget, within that annual budget. So that's not really going to change much for me. Silver, though, is a really interesting one to round out this video on, the purchasing potential for silver. Now, I have two sort of attitudes to purchasing silver. First is my business, the hand-poured silver that I make. Of course, I need silver to be able to do that business, so I need to be looking to buy silver on a regular basis. Buying silver in one lump sum is risky on a couple of levels because you have to have a large amount of capital committed. You lock in the price, and if the price goes down the next week, day, month, you are in trouble. Well, you're not in trouble, but you could have bought it for less. So if you buy slowly over time, though, the risk is that it will creep up, and I do think prices will creep up. So potentially for the business side of things, a large order of silver shot, a reinvestment into the business is a wise course of action. That's definitely something for me to consider. Now, that does mean for me personally that the kind of silver budget for the business is kind of taken up, and that doesn't necessarily leave a lot for personal stacking. We have a certain amount of money that we can spend, and the business is the way that I earn a living. So it's like kind of that fuel to help me drive and be able to pay the bills and the mortgage and everything. So there's lots of different things to think about in that sense. Now, where I want to finish by saying is that I do still think there's a place for silver in my investment for 2020, but nowhere near as much as gold. I do think gold is the long-term favourite for me. I bought a significant amount of silver in form of Queen's Beast coins and Valiant coins in 2018-19. I have a foundation of silver. I want to continue to build that foundation of gold. I will buy some silver, like the Queen's Beasties and things like that, to complete sets, but I won't be going in on large numbers on it. So that's my kind of strategies, my thinking, where we're going, I think, for 2020. So to sum up the whole video, could be an interesting year ahead. There could be some, there could be some downturns. There could be some recessions ahead. There have been people who've been predicting that. There could be some weakening in the US dollar. There could be some interesting times ahead with impeachment, with election. There could be interesting times with Brexit. There could be interesting times with trade wars. So there's definitely things that are going to happen. However, there are things that are really positive against metals. Stocks and shares are really good right now. They are continuing to improve as the months go on. So there's definitely things to think about. So how does that all affect you? I would love to know. One of the reasons I make these style of videos is to get people thinking, to get people talking, and we have really fun discussions down in the comments section. The only thing I ask is that you be respectful of mine and other people's opinions. If you just call people morons or myself an idiot or whatever, you're probably not going to get very far within the chat. So I'll see you down in the comment section for a really fun debate. Let me know your thoughts on this, and even if you do think that silver is going to shoot the moon, I'd like to know why you think that. It's a real bugbear of mine that I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm intrigued as to why people think that. So feel free to comment. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed my style of presentation of it, then please do hit the thumbs up button. It really does help everything we do here on the YouTube channel to share everything around. And if you would like to see videos like this in the future, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and you can get notifications if you hit the alarm bell, of course. Otherwise, that's it. I wish everybody out there a very prosperous and happy 2020 ahead. I know it's going to be an interesting and busy year for a lot of different things. Gold, silver, beside our personal life is going to be a very interesting one, 2020, that's for sure. So please have a fantastic year, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you all for watching, and please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.